Hi guys, it's Miss Amy here and Jack, who's a little bit sleepy, so I'm going to let him sit on my lap. But we are here to talk to you just a little bit about the flower communion. The main thing I want to do is let everybody know how much I miss being with you guys. And I was really thinking about it as I was getting the flower communion ready for this Sunday because it's the first time I've ever done it without all the RE kids, and it just didn't feel right. So what I want to do is just take a minute to do a little bit of a mini lesson about the flower communion, and then I'm going to give you a whole bunch of stuff you can do if you feel like it, or you don't have to if you don't feel like it. I know this is kind of a weird time for all of us, so I just wanted to give you a little something to do with that. So the first thing I want to do is what we used to do when we would light our pretend chalice. We would say the doxology. So I want to see if you can say it with me. I'm not going to put it on the screen. This is a test to see if you remember. So say it with me, please. For life and love and health and peace, for nature's wonders without cease, for food and shelter, work and rest, we offer joy and thankfulness. Amen. And then this is the time when usually we would start out with our own candles of community or stones of community, when we would talk about our joys and concerns. And we can't really do that because we have a video, and it'd be kind of weird of me to just tell you about all my things. But I think it's really important that either now or maybe afterwards you take a minute to just stop and think, because it's really normal to have feelings of being frustrated or sad, especially at this time when we're not able to go to school, that we're not able to see our friends. It's just a little bit unexpected and weird. But it's also important to stop and think that even amidst the weird things that are going on, that there's a lot of awesome, fun, joyful things that are happening too. So I think it's important to take a minute and do that. So I'm sorry we can't do it together, but please make sure you take a minute. Maybe you can tell somebody in your family about your joys and concerns. So I thought what I would do, I'm going to try something a little bit crazy. And if at any point you might need to stop the video to do a couple things here and there, and then you can start the video back. Because the first thing I thought is if you're feeling up to it, you guys always love to play the yes/no game. So I have made up a quick version of it. And what you could do is you could make two different signs that say yes and no and put them in two different spots in your room. And then remember, what you do is you go move toward the sign with the answer that you want to express. And these are things that you may or may not know the answer to, just like how we would start in a regular RE lesson. If you've been a careful listener during past flower communions, you might know the answers. So what I'll do is I'll ask the question, I'll pause for a minute, but it's probably not going to be long enough for you to go move across the room. So you might want to go do that. Stop the video, then go do that, then come back. And I have 3 questions for you, and then at the end I'll tell you the answers to all of them. So the first question, yes or no? Dun dun dun. The very first flower communion service was held in the U.S. 100 years ago. Do you think that's true or false? Yes or no? So you can pause this and go move towards your sign. Okay, number 2. All UU churches around the world celebrate the flower communion in May. Do you think that's yes or no? You can stop the video. All right, and for the last question, number 3, yes or no? Christian churches like Methodists and Baptists also participate in the flower communion. Do you think that's a yes or a no? Okay, you can pause the video. And welcome back. I'm going to talk to you about the answers, and I'm just like always, I'm not going to just quite tell you straight up, but that's how I'm going to explain a little bit about the flower communion. So if you've been listening to the services about the flower communion, you will know that the first answer is not quite true. You know, I like to trick you guys. The first flower communion did happen about 100 years ago, so it's kind of hard to believe that we've been doing it for that long. It actually was very first done in 1923. And it's something that was started by a man named Norbert Kopek, and he lived in the country of Czechoslovakia, which is now called the Czech Republic. And he was the first one to come up with the idea of the flower communion. And then later on, his wife traveled to America, and his wife happened to be named Maya, which is the name of my daughter. And she came to the United States, and she did the flower communion in a church in Massachusetts, and everybody really liked it. So it kind of took on, and that was in 1940, and it kind of spread after that. So the flower communion is something that most UU churches do, but not all of them. We don't have a set day for it, but it usually happens in May, because what it usually is, it's usually a couple different things. It's usually the service that is towards the end of the school year, when we know people are going to be going on summer vacation. In some community, well, like even in our church, a lot of times we didn't have RE in the summer, so it would be like that last time that we all came together before we went off in the summer. It also usually falls around Mother's Day, so we've done a couple services relating it to Mother's Day. And the other thing is, in most congregations, we call it Children's Sunday. That's why most flower communions that we've done at Mountain Light have involved the RE kids. So it's something that is done all, and just so you know, to answer that question, most of the UU churches are in America, but they're all over the world. So yes, it is something that's done all over the world in UU churches, but not necessarily on the same day, just around the same time. And then the last question is a little bit tricky. Do Christian churches also do the flower communion? Well, that's a no. Christian churches do a different kind of communion that they call Holy Communion. And I'm going to show you a picture of it because it's important to understand. And actually, that's a coloring page of the flower communion. That's not Holy Communion. It's important to understand that this is where the idea of the flower communion came from. In Christian churches, a common ceremony that's done all throughout the year is Holy Communion. I grew up in a Christian church, and I've actually gone through First Communion, and I've taken communion, and I've experienced a lot. And it's something that you might want to ask people in your family about. If your family grew up in a Christian church, they could tell you a little bit more about what it's all about. To me, the main message of Holy Communion is remembering Jesus, but remembering that a little bit of God is inside of each one of us. So that's what I think of it as. And so to me, that kind of is part of the flower communion as well. But I wanted you to see a picture of this to know this is where it originated. And one of the activities I'm going to suggest that you do is talk to somebody who's participated in the Holy Communion. And if they go to a Christian church, it's something that's done often. In my church, we did it every other weekend. So it's something we did a lot. But let me make myself big again here. And just a couple more things to talk about. So when we do our flower communion here at MLUUC, and it's a little bit tricky this year because we are not together in person, and normally a main thing that we do is we exchange flowers, and the idea is that you leave with a flower that somebody else brought, and we can't do that, so we have to just hold it in our heads and our hearts, our memories of everything that happened this time. But the idea is that each flower by itself is very beautiful, just like each person by ourselves is very beautiful. But when we put them together to make a bouquet, they make something even more beautiful, a different kind of beautiful. So that's the symbolism behind our flower communion. Now, if you're into it, I've made a choice board with some activities, and these are the kind of things that I was thinking if I were going to teach RE, these are the things we might do. This is totally up to you. I would love it if you would try some of these things, but you don't have to. If you do some of these things, I would love to see pictures that we could put on our Mountain Light Facebook page or web site. Let me get our... Well, first, let me make myself smaller so you can't see me making any mistakes, right? Okay, here's the choice board. So these are just all ideas, and I'll go over them really quickly. The first is a link, and just know I put some links on there just for suggestions, but you might be able to find even better ones. learn how to make an origami flower. That's the easiest I could find. Some of them are really, really hard, so you want to be careful with that. One couple rules of thumb when you're doing any origami, you always want to start with a perfect square. It's also really important to take your time to be slow and perfect and careful. So if that's not your thing, origami might not be for you. Some people find it really frustrating. Another thing is I wanted you to learn about a couple of famous artists. The first one I wanted you to learn about is Georgia O'Keeffe, and she has a very distinct way of painting flowers. And I want you to look at some of her pictures, and I want you to see if you can figure out what makes her flowers different from other people's paintings. Another one I put in a video about Vincent van Gogh. Two of his most famous paintings are of flowers. One is called Sunflowers, and one is called Irises. So that's a kind of cool thing to learn about. And then on the second row, it says, this one's kind of tricky. Learn the names of some of the plants in your yard. This is something I actually have been wanting to do. And I put a link to a book about plants in Georgia, but I will go ahead and say this one is probably one of the tougher ones. Read a book, a story, or a poem about a flower and share it. I would love for you guys to tell me some awesome things about flowers, because I have to be honest, when I've tried to think of stuff for the flower communion, stories about flowers don't come to mind, so maybe you guys know something cool. This is where I was talking about to talk to somebody who's participated in Holy Communion, which is a little bit different than the flower communion, so you could get them to tell you about what it's like. When I was planning our service about the flower communion, I was thinking of all the songs I knew that were about flowers. So I encourage you to do that, because you're way cooler than I am, and you probably know a lot more than I do. So maybe you could find some videos for songs about flowers and share those with me too. I would love to have more to choose from. I have 2 more craft ideas. This is something I used to love to do in Girl Scouts. I was a Girl Scout. We made tissue paper, or no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it backwards. This is the tissue paper flower, and you have to have tissue paper at home, so that will only work if you have that. But I'm pretty sure, unless something gone wrong, that you have some empty toilet paper rolls at home. If so, these are directions for how to cut them and make a flower out of them. Another favorite thing is to do a crayon rubbing of flowers and plants in your yard. We've done it a few times in RE. Remember, my tricks are that you have to have a naked crayon, no paper on it, and that you need to lie it down like it's taking a nap and rub it. That gives you the best results. I posted a video right here of a time-lapse video of a flower growing that's pretty cool, but you can find some other time-lapse videos of plants that are pretty neat, and you'll learn a lot about the plants just by watching the video. And something that the grown-ups are talking about today for flower communion, I thought you could do. What are some of your favorite mountain light memories? Maybe you could write about it, draw a picture, or just talk to somebody about it. That's what we're doing today, is talking about how our church is so much more than just a building, and that even though we're not together in person, we're still together. And then the last thing was, my idea was to connect with someone. You know, there's some people at our churches that are sheltering in place right now, and they're alone. They're at home alone. And actually, it's not just our church, a lot of people everywhere. And I can't imagine how lonely that would be. So I encourage you to think about, and probably have to talk to your parents about who that would be, and maybe make a card or a picture, something you can mail them or email them, or if you like talking on the phone, give them a phone call. So anyway, these are a whole bunch of ideas just to keep you busy. If you do any of this, I would love, love, love to see what you've created. But my main message is, I miss you, I care about you, and I really have fun thinking about all the flower communions we did together. So let Jack say goodbye. He is totally out for the count today. Bye guys, have a great weekend.